All right, welcome to this edition of the Contractor Commute. My name is Drew Williams here with Ben Walsh, founder of ConGenius, and we're going to talk today about maintaining a healthy sales pipeline. So we've talked about a lot of things in the podcast, but today we're going to talk about maintaining a healthy sales pipeline, what that means. And to start off, actually, I'm just going to talk about what is a pipeline for a minute, because it's sort of a salesy term. Some people may dial in and know what that is, but you might be someone who's like, what are they talking about? Pipeline really, is something that flows from one end to another. And how do you get your prospects and then move them through the pipeline from the person who called or visited your website or was a referral from a friend to that first contact, phone call, qualification, proposal, lead, close, sign contract. So if you view all of those things as a pipeline from point A to point B, that's when they start taking your time at the beginning, but at the end is when they start paying you money. And that's kind of what you want to move them through and figuring out how do you not just get a pipeline, but fill it the way that you want to. So we're talking about maintaining a healthy sales pipeline. And we'll start off actually with a few things, Ben, on what does an unhealthy sales pipeline look like? Because there's, a lot of folks who they've got that process going, their phone's ringing, they're working, they're busy, but they maybe haven't thought about it like what's the health of the actual pipeline itself. So we're going to up front going to talk through four things on what is an unhealthy sales pipeline. Number one is one that's empty, like there's nobody in it. So that's problematic. Number one. Number two would be unqualified leads. Like you've got people who are taking your time, your phone's ringing, but they're not qualified. For multiple reasons. We'll get into those details. Third, it's unmanageable. Sometimes you might have too many people in the pipeline, or your phone's ringing more than you can answer it, and you're having a hard time keeping a track of, who are you talking to? What am I doing? And it becomes unmanageable. And then four, we're going to talk about closing the wrong jobs, which is I'm sure you've got some stories on that front as well. So
unfortunately,
yeah, we'll talk through those four things. So let's talk about a pipeline that's empty or low. So this is, maybe you're just getting started, or maybe you're going from job to job, or maybe you've expanded, right? Now you've got a couple people working for you, and now the pressure of getting the next job lined up is there. And maybe you're working right now, but in the back of your mind, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do to keep my crew busy next.
Yep.
It's an empty pipeline. So talk to us about that. And, what does an empty pipeline look like?
The empty pipeline is the one that keeps us awake at night. Don't know where the next job's at. We have maybe the projects we have lined up, we're working on those, but what happens next week is, so there's obviously a little bit of a stress involved with an empty pipeline, or one that's low, right? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be zero, but we got one person in the pipeline. They're kind of kicking the tires still. We're not sure when they're going to close. We're not sure what their expectations are. We're not sure if we even want to work for that person. So it could be low enough where we just don't have choices. And when we don't have choices, sometimes we're forced to make bad choices.
Yep.
Well, we don't have anything. Let's take that one person that came in. And even though we know that's not ideal, that's not the kind of person we're trying to look for. So that's an unhealthy pipeline. You're really at the point where there's just not enough volume to keep up with your production, your output, what you can get done.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go to a hierarchy of needs, right? That's someone's like, hey, I don't know how I'm going to feed my kids.
Right.
Like that's a problematic place to be, because you don't know where the next job is coming from. So
the overhead component as well. You've got not just the personal aspect of it, but your business, the business health.
Yeah.
Where's that overhead going to be paid from?
Right.
And then having jobs with the right margin when there's not anything to choose from.
Yeah.
We have that problem.
Because it's frankly a lot of time and effort that goes in from the time that in the beginning of the pipeline, someone contacts you, that they start taking your time immediately. So it takes a while to get them in that pipeline and moving closer to the time. You want your pipeline and your bank account to be stocked, but it takes time to move them through to the point where they're actually
fantastic,
paying you. So making sure you're having the right conversations and you're moving them through that process so that you're timing your time and your money correctly to where your time is full with the right things, but also your, bank account balances as well.
Yep.
All right, so talking about empty pipeline, talk to me about unqualified leads. So that's number two on what does an unhealthy pipeline look like. You've got people in it, but they're unhealthy leads. Not all business is good business. We've talked about this in the past, but what's an unqualified lead look like?
So to preface that, the unqualified lead, inevitably, you're going to have some people in your pipeline at all times that are unqualified, but you want to be able to sort through those quickly at the early stage before they fill the later stages of your pipeline when you're trying to close jobs for people that are unqualified. So We want to be able to quickly get to the point of figuring out whether somebody's qualified. And what that looks like in an unhealthy pipeline is we have a lot of people we're actually entertaining working for because there's really not the volume we need. So it kind of ties back to the first point, the low volume. So now we have a bunch of people in there because we need people in the pipeline. We have a bunch of people that are unqualified. And what that would look like is just, they're the wrong budget expectations. You're the Macy's contractor. They're thinking they're shopping at Walmart. They're 2 hours away and you only want to work 10 minutes away from your shop. It could be even the scope of work. They want a project done that you don't have the resources to do or don't want to do.
Right.
So a lot of reasons for somebody to be unqualified. And if your pipeline's filled with those types of projects, well, I guess I'll try, to accommodate this person an hour and a half away because there's nothing else.
Right. Yeah. Standard lowers, right? And then you end up,
Yeah.
I think we talked about this in the past, but you end up working on unqualified leads. One, again, those people are taking your time immediately and you may never get paid for it because the fact that they're not qualified means, but people will shop and take your time with no intention of ever doing business and figuring out how to understand if this person is qualified or not. It's important. It's strategic. But I've noticed that people who don't have money generally have a lot more time. And they have no problem wasting your time as well when they never intend to give you money. That's the person who will sit there and bicker back and forth over a $5 fee or, that sort of, they'll take the time to sit on hold with customer service with whoever, or talking to you and having the 8th conversation of your time they need. At the end of the day, they're not qualified. And the sooner you can figure that out, the better.
Some of the most demanding clients I've had were the ones that were also the cheapest.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah. Everyone's got 2 assets, time and money. And they generally are good at wasting both. I'm thinking of people, but I'm not going to name them by name right now. Because,
we shall leave
everyone's got a person in their mind right now that wastes time, wastes money, and they have no problem wasting yours as well.
Yep.
All right. So 3 things in unhealthy pipeline. 1 is empty or load. 2, it's unqualified. The third one is unmanageable, where you've maybe got, you think about a pipeline, they have certain widths to them, right? Like you might have a small capacity, but you've got more people trying to come through that pipeline than you know what to do with. And all of a sudden you're late, you're not managing it. You missed phone calls, et cetera. So talk to me about what does an unmanageable pipeline look like?
This is going to change depending on your business, your scale, who's involved in your team and your sales process. You might have an estimator, salesperson, person doing takeoffs. So that pipe's bigger for you. You can handle more volume to get jobs closed. But it also might mean that you actually need to close more projects. So that pipe is a bigger pipe. You've got more to move through it. The unmanageable pipeline, the unhealthy aspect of that is going to be where the client experience is poor. People don't get the service that they're really expecting. The timeliness of getting back to people, it's a pressure point for you. It's just, oh man, I've got all those bids to get out. When's that going to happen? It's months later. People are hounding you to get quotes. It could also be where it's just overwhelm. Yeah. To the person as a business owner where you just don't know how you're going to keep up with it.
Right.
So that's unhealthy. I mean, it's unhealthy for you as an individual. It's unhealthy for your company. And then the other aspect of that would just be where if you can't manage those jobs to get them towards a close, you're going to end up having a situation where you can't close jobs because you can't get the qualified people that you want to work through to the close because there's all this other clutter going on. Right. You don't know how to cipher, you don't know how to filter out who are the people you want to work for? How do you get those jobs to close?
Yeah. And again, moving them through the pipeline, right? You don't want people hanging out in the middle of that where they're interested. You've looked at their job, you've given them a quote, and they're just hanging out. You don't want an overwhelming amount of people in that process at the same time.
And then back to your point, the time wasters. I mean, you end up spending more time trying to get jobs to close that maybe you shouldn't have. So it's a very unstructured, very laborious, difficult, weighty process. Yeah, that's unhealthy.
Yeah, I think we've been there, right? I hear the pain in your voice.
Yes.
I see that pain in your eye.
Yeah.
And the fourth one we talked about is closing the wrong jobs. So, which, I think we've probably all done. I'm imagining you've got a story or two on closing the wrong job. You get someone through this process, all the work, and then you close it, and then you realize it's the wrong job. So, Not all work is good work. That's a hard lesson to learn. But what is it like when you close the wrong job?
Well, obviously there was a breakdown in the process earlier to this where the wrong person was qualified. You qualified an unqualified lead.
Yeah.
Somebody came to you looking for something. We said, well, we need some job. Let's go ahead and just lower the standard.
Yeah.
Accept something we probably wouldn't otherwise have accepted. Closing the wrong job really comes back to is even understanding what the right job is for my team and for my business, and what do these margins need to be. So you end up closing jobs without a lack of without the data you need to know. But what you do know in an unhealthy sales pipeline is you closed a job that ended up hurting your business.
Mm-hmm.
So the result of it was, I've got a job that I wish I hadn't sold. That's unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very unhealthy.
What are some common reasons that happens? Like, what's the trigger point where you're doing the job and you're like, this was not a good idea? Is it the customer? Is it money? Is it just the scope? What are the types of things that we tend to overlook?
Yeah. As a technology company, we use a term called technical debt. And it's essentially you put so much into something, and you can use this in any business where you're saying, it's not an ideal solution, but we've been using it so long. We put so much money into it. Let's just keep rolling with it.
Yeah.
And there's a certain level of debt that you have to a client where you feel like, I've spent weeks trying to close that.
Mm-hmm.
I put all this time into this. So let's just, obviously it's not ideal. It's not something that's probably going to end up working out the way we want, but you have this feeling of let's just keep going with it.
Right.
It's not what we otherwise would have chosen.
Right.
So there's a level of wanting to keep your word, wanting to keep your commitments, wanting to do what you more or less promised that person, or what they have expected from you, whether they should or not.
Right. And you got to that point in the pipeline. This is a process, right? You walked with this potential customer all the way through it. You spent time. At this point, you probably went to their house. You took your measurements. You got a proposal out. And the whole time you knew these people lived an hour and a half away from where you like to do work. Well, maybe they were a friend of the family, but you feel, well, okay, I went through all the work. I got to do this job. Not realizing that extra commute time is actually going to kill your profitability or your ability to get it done on time. But it's like, you end up too far in.
Hard to pull out of that type of situation.
Yeah, you close something that you probably shouldn't have been talking to begin with. And if you had a healthy pipeline process, you would have known that early on. Cut off ties, said no, which is something we're talking about too. Is the ability to say no early on instead of investing. And then you close something that you probably shouldn't have closed.
Yep. So it all points back to where it all started.
Yeah.
These are very interconnected aspects of unhealthy pipelines. And the culmination is jobs we shouldn't have had.
Right.
Time wasted, people we've invested a lot of resources in. Even if it didn't result in a close, we still spent a lot of time trying to close the wrong deal.
And that's why, why people go out of business, why they end up behind the eight ball trying to catch up all the time is these things. And a lot of times we don't think about it. You just go and we stay busy, we stay active, but like activity doesn't always equal achievement. And a lot of times we're very active, we're busy, but we're not actually prospering, right? Yeah. So now that everyone's totally depressed out of their minds, everyone's like, it's me, man. I think now that we're all thoroughly depressed, because I think we've all been there, right? This is relevant because it's easy to get what we're talking about doing. And so let's get into like why you actually need a healthy sales pipeline. So we're going to talk about what does a healthy one look like here, and then I think eventually we're going to get into like, how do you go do it, right? So this is where we can kind of shift into, okay, what does it look like to have it be healthy? And then how do you get from point A to point B? If you are that person where the last 4 things we talked about, you're like, yep, that's my life. Let's get into it. So we're into about 5 things on why you need a healthy sales pipeline. So I'm going to hit these 5 up front, then we're getting and kind of talk about it in more detail here. But the first one on why you need a healthy sales pipeline is to be able to accept the work and clients that you want instead of just what's available at the time. And so that's one. The second one is having a steady revenue stream that allows you to have a healthy bottom line. So we talked about that process of people coming into your business and customers coming in, but also having a healthy flow of money coming in, right? Where it's not up and down, not feast or famine, but a healthy flow of money coming in. Third one is keeps your team and subcontractors busy, right? So that's the goal, right? Is to keep the team. And as you grow, you're going to have a team. If you want to have long-term success in this business, you got to go beyond just you and the truck. You're going to end up building a team. And to keep that team happy, you got to have the healthy sales pipeline.
Yep.
4 is know what's coming up and be able to plan for it. And then 5 is having the ability to grow. So those are kind of the big 5 on like why you need that healthy sales pipeline. But let's get into those 5 and say, hey, what does it actually look like? So Those are easy things to say, but there's a lot more detail that goes into making those things a reality. So if we talk about having the right amount of volume, not too empty, which is no business, not overfilled where you're running ragged just trying to keep up. What does that healthy sales pipeline look like?
When we have a healthy sales pipeline, we have when we talk about volume going through this pipe, figuratively speaking.
Yeah. There's a lot of pipe references that we're going to stay away from.
The plumbers are very happy right now. Yeah. When we have a pipe just full of garbage.
Yeah.
So we have a limited capacity to be able to handle a certain volume of people coming to our business. Every business has this sort of limit of saying that's just too much, or we're concerned because there's not enough coming through it. And really, it's kind of weeding out. I mean, we're going to go into the why later, but it's really kind of this healthy sales pipeline looks like I've got the right number. I've got the right ratio of people moving through here that are, it's a healthy, when we talk about even physical health, antibodies in our bloodstream, et cetera, there's just the right balance of positives and negatives in this pipeline where we're moving the right leads through. And we've got, not this overwhelm we have to keep up with. We can sort of be able to say no to the right people, say yes to the right people. And so, there's enough people coming in where we can be out as far as we need. And this is going to look different for every business, right? I mean, somebody's going to need more volume than others, or there might be a specialty where you end up having to weed out a lot of people. Yeah. So that volume might need to be higher. So understanding what that metric needs to look like. Yeah.
And knowing your capacity. And if you want to upgrade your pipeline, which is growing the team. Now, maybe you do have a full-time salesperson or marketing or whatever you've got. You're trying to increase the size of your pipeline, making sure that what you're bringing in from a volume standpoint, you also have the capacity to serve, to serve well. So we talk about volume. Let's talk about quality. So the volume of what's coming through the pipeline. The second thing is the quality of what's coming through it. And we say talking about getting only quality leads get past qualifying.
Right.
I think that's a lesson that you got to learn the hard way normally too, is what does it mean to qualify a lead? There's probably people listening right now, if someone's like, I don't even know what you mean by qualifying a lead. Can you break that down? What is that? How do you do that? What does that
mean? So simple in theory, but somewhat difficult to execute on. And qualifying in order to get quality, as you pointed out, is really about understanding the parameters in your business that really identify the ideal client you want to work for. And there's a couple of really core aspects of that. The location's a big factor, the scope of work. And sometimes we leave these things undefined in our business on purpose because we realize, well, the pipeline's constantly going up and down. So let's leave ourselves some room to be able to make exceptions. Let's accept some people that we would otherwise would not work for. So we almost hesitate to make these kind of confirmed rules in our business of saying, that's an unqualified person.
Yeah.
And so we sort of dilute the quality of our pipeline because we make these sort of exceptions. Well, that person, I like them. They're, we want to help them out. Sometimes you can make exceptions. Yeah. But if that's modus operandi, that's the way you run your business.
It can feel kind of counterintuitive for a business owner to say, hey, I'm going to go be a business owner and go generate business and create. And then to say, well, I don't want that type of business, because early on, especially the temptation is just to get whatever you can get. Yeah. And it feels almost counterintuitive to say no to business based on quality.
And we have to understand some real problems that happen if we go that direction. We don't do that type of work, but we're going to make an exception and try it anyway. And so you have a team that's frustrated because they can't really meet the expectations of the client because they don't have the experience or they don't have the resources to be able to do it. And so that's a big problem. Yeah. Bad review, unhappy client because you weren't set up to do that. Yeah. The other thing is budget. Somebody comes along saying, I want an amazing deal. I mean, I remember one time somebody calling and saying, why don't you look at a project? Obviously you make the time, make the initial connection. This person came back and said, well, bid it like you were, this was for grandma. And I remember thinking, actually, my grandma's would probably give me quite a, she would pay for this. Yeah. So that'd be different. Yeah. She would pay a premium.
Right.
Because I was her grandson. But you get those red flags.
Yep.
This is not a quality candidate, doesn't align with where you're at as a business, and knowing what even the price points need to be. Something was really, well, we can get into why later, but I'm veering off topic. I want to jump right into solutions.
Yeah.
So yeah, healthy would be really having that quality when you have the location, the budget, scope of work really clear.
Yeah. I think it makes sense. Yeah. Talk about budget, time, scope, quality. Can you meet or exceed their expectations?
Yes.
On all of those.
Yes.
And it's probably, like having that checklist of, hey, here's what we look for in the type of work that we're doing. So if it's healthy, that means that one, we've got the volume coming in. Two, the quality of what's coming in, we're happy with. We feel like we're investing our time in things that could be good, profitable jobs for us. There's something coming down that pipeline that we're like, oh shoot, I kind of hope I don't have to do that one. You want to keep that standard high, right?
Yes.
And then the other one is, keeping your sales pipeline manageable, right? So depending on the resources and the team, you want to have a manageable pipeline to where you're also not overwhelmed. That would be another thing to get into. So, the volume, the quality, and then can you manage it?
Yeah. And in a healthy pipeline, that means the client experience is exceptional. People get quick turnarounds when they're looking for pricing, they're looking for information from your business. You're able to turn it around quickly. It also means that the expectations, as you brought up, are defined really clearly, where people know what the quality looks like in your business, what the price point looks like in your business, where you're able to really turn around a very client-centered experience where people's expectations are, the expectations are clear and you're able to meet those expectations. I mean, in a nutshell, that's what it's all about. The next steps are defined, where you're saying, this is our pathway. Here's where you start. Here's where the timelines. Here's what the next steps are. So in more detail, I guess a healthy pipeline would really end up being where the communication is great, the timeliness is great, client experience is excellent, because you're able to manage all of the leads well. You end up only moving the quality leads through. So you got quality, and now you end up able to meet those expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're talking about even the goals and like how far out do you want to be booked out?
Yes.
That answer is different for everybody too, I would think.
Well, yeah. I mean, it might even be hard to try to schedule things out a year from now. I mean, it's almost impossible to try to, hey, on December 12th of 2023, we will start your project.
Right.
It's hard to really predict that far out. But the healthy part is really where you have the confidence of knowing the right jobs are coming through. You're managing it well.
Yeah.
And some of these early concerns are eliminated.
Right. Yeah. And ideally you got, volume, quality, that customer who maybe you are booking out a year in advance. I mean, I know guys who do this where it's like, hey, they're a year out and that's just the system that they've got that works. But they also know if this customer really wants us and willing to pay the price that we want to charge, they'll wait a year because they're committed to us and we're the right match. So the manageable is your client expectation is excellent, but I'd also think it looks like your sanity levels are better as well, right? You're not just, there's systems and processes in place where because you've got good volume, it's healthy, they're qualified. You're sleeping at night because you know that every phone call that you're making or every potential customer you're interacting with, you feel good about. You're like, this is a job I want to do. We know that they'll pay us. We know it's going to be a good job. We know they're going to pay on time. Their expectations are clear. And I think when you do that, you're investing your time into something that you know is going to be profitable and valuable to you. And I think that's where you sleep at night.
And you didn't clog the pipe with a bunch of projects that you didn't want to do.
Right.
The pipe has limited volume. You can only get so many leads through there.
Yeah.
And once you start lowering those standards, making exceptions, getting that thing all full with a bunch of leads that you just can't manage, they end up having it. The result of it being, well, look at that. I can't take on that job that I really want to take on because when they want it done, I've got somebody else that I'd rather not work for already on the books.
Right.
And they're already on the schedule.
And they're probably already high maintenance. You know this. You know you can't call them and delay it again. You know there are people who are going to hop on the internet and tell the world how terrible you are. It's like, just got to deal with it,
Yeah.
And I know we're going to get into more on how you actually build that because we're like, hey, here's what it would look like, but there's some practical things we're going to talk about later on. What do you do? And I think this is an important one of, qualifying and managing that pipeline. There's some how-tos we'll get into.
Yeah. And going back to just the motivations behind it and really the goals for, that whole why you need the healthy pipeline, what we started off with, just being able to say, these are the people we want to work for. These are the jobs we want. We have the revenue stream we want to have. And then one of the key things, too, is you have no ability to grow if you're stuck, you're trapped, you can't manage where you're at today.
Yeah.
You don't have margin to be able to take it to the next level. You're just stuck in the current spot.
Yeah.
I think we've been there. I mean, you know, you just today, there's no way to get beyond today because it's overwhelming just to keep up with what I've got going on.
Yeah. You've unintentionally dug yourself a niche that now you can't get out of.
Yeah.
Like you dug yourself the wrong hole. And now you can't get out of it.
And word gets out to the people that refer. If you start taking on the wrong jobs, they refer you to the wrong people as well. And it just snowballs out of control. Sorry, we're going all negative again, but next episode we can talk about how we actually solve some of these core pain points.
It's true though. Like people are who they hang out with, bottom line. Man. You get someone who's high maintenance, cheap, whatever. The people they hang out with are the same way, you know, and so getting in the right circles is pretty key, but you'll never get there if you're not intentionally thinking about this concept of pipeline. You're never going to get there. You're just going to be reacting to the market as opposed to proactively defining your brand and getting after who you are, who you serve, the type of work that you do. And I think being intentional about that, especially in the early days, is very, very important.
Yes.
So we're going to wrap up this episode, and we're going to get into another episode where we talk about the how-tos on some of this stuff. And so I think kind of the goal of this episode was to get people to think about, what is my pipeline? Like, do I have a process for this, or is it just kind of answer phone calls and emails as they come in? Do I have a clean way of moving people from stage to stage to stage through this pipeline, and then getting them to close? And so I think, you know, what is a pipeline? What does it look like when it's unhealthy? We talked about that. And then what does it look like when it is healthy? And I think that's like if we were too negative, like that's the hope. And it's like, hey, you can create this. Like guys who get real successful in this space have a very actually clean, simple process that they use to make sure that they're only doing work they feel good about doing. But that didn't start with when they're on the job. That started with when they answered the phone the first time. And that's where, you know, if we can get that pipeline rolling, you'll end up doing the work you want to be doing, making the profit you want to be making, working for customers that you want to be working for. But
can't wait to dive into it. It's gonna be really fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So that's a wrap for this episode of the Contractor Commute. Again, Drew Williams. We're with Ben Walsh, founder of ConGenius, and we will see you next time on the Contractor Commute.